2023 began just like 2022 ended. Warm, cloudy, and depressing. Very little snow fell in January, and the most noteworthy event was that temperatures never fell below 20 degrees at Bradley International Airport, and the daily temperature was above average every single day. By the first weekend of February, a brief but record-breaking Arctic blast impacted much of the state, sending temperatures as low as 15 below zero or lower, with wind chills as low as 40 degrees below zero. There were also a few snow chances, however, nothing noteworthy for February standards. On March 13th through 15th, a major snowstorm impacted mainly the hills of northwest and northeast Connecticut, dumping as much as 18 inches of snow or more. The valley and shoreline saw little, if any, accumulation, but did see 2 to 3 inches of rain, which caused minor flooding. April was relatively calm, except it was extremely dry and very warm. The temperature reached 96 degrees at Bradley Airport on April 14th, tying the all-time highest April temperature. There were also many days with fire weather alerts throughout the state as we entered a short-term drought. May began with a record-setting low-pressure system on the 1st. The pressure dropped to 981 millibars at Hartford and New Haven, setting new May low-pressure records. Like April, May was very dry, bringing with it a number of high fire danger days, but the real story began to be the Canadian wildfire smoke that filled the air. The smoke was mainly elevated, but did mix it down to the surface, especially on the 31st. Storm season finally began in June with a few severe storms on the 2nd. On the 6th and 7th, the state was plagued with dangerous levels of wildfire smoke. The air quality index reached the highest levels in decades as residents were urged to stay indoors and close windows. The smoke created apocalyptic scenes with orange skies, especially down in southwest Connecticut on the 7th, and especially towards New York City. The start of July was how the entire month was, extremely wet. It was the wettest July on record for the Hartford area, with over a foot of rain falling. Severe weather season was also in full swing, with multiple severe weather and flash flooding events. It just seemed like the rain wouldn't end. A remarkable rainstorm across the Northeast on the 9th and 10th produced devastating flash flooding across portions of Vermont and New York. The rainfall in Vermont was most worrisome for the Connecticut River downstream. The flooding on the Connecticut River down here in Connecticut was the worst since Irene in 2011. Farms along the river were devastated, with Hayes Farm and Rocky Hill hit the hardest. Severe weather season continued into August. An event on the 12th produced a brief tornado in southern Litchfield County near the Roxbury Bridge waterline. A few days later, on the 18th, a morning complex of storm produced damaging winds, significant flash flooding, and a tornado in northeast Connecticut. We thought July was wet, and it certainly was, but September ended up being much worse for parts of the state. The beginning of the month was hot and humid with a heat wave. By the 8th, the heat was gone, but the humidity stayed and severe storms and flooding were on. The 8th saw multiple rounds of severe storm in the state, with damaging winds and flash flooding. On the 9th, 10th, and the 11th, it was the same story. After a brief break on the 12th, the 13th brought a significant batch of morning storms, which produced significant flash flooding and some severe weather. A second batch of storms that afternoon produced a tornado in the northeast corner before exiting east, as well as some additional flash flooding. Hurricane Lee grazed New England on the 16th, but with little to no impact experienced in Connecticut. The rest of the month was still very wet. A rainstorm began on the 24th into the 25th and produced localized amounts of 5 inches. And on the 29th, a significant flash flooding event affected western Connecticut, sending rivers rapidly out of their banks. September 2023 will go down as one of the wettest on record, just behind 1938. October was very quiet and much drier than the past few months. November was also similar. A storm on the day before Thanksgiving produced heavy rain and gusty winds, but with little to no impact. December started off quiet, but that would not last. A storm on the 10th through the 11th brought significant rainfall with a swath of 3 to 6 inches of rain. The wind with this storm thankfully underachieved, but we wouldn't be so lucky a week later. On the 17th through the 18th, a significant storm brought damaging winds, heavy rain, and coastal flooding. Winds caused widespread power outages, especially in eastern Connecticut, and an additional 3 to 5 inches of rain brought more flash flooding to parts of the state. Widespread rain across the region, along with snowmelt up north, created a big rise on the Connecticut River, surpassing the July flood. This time, it was the winter, so farms were not hit as hard with no crops in the ground. 2023 was another wild year of weather across Connecticut, and let's see what 2024 has to offer.